Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Tim Meyer, here for the Romeo Sports Recap, powered by the Mitt TV. Remember, this show is available on both YouTube and Spotify. And before we begin, a word from our sponsors. This podcast is powered by the Mitt TV of Romeo, Michigan. If you're looking to start a podcast for your business or personal use, look no further than the Mitt TV. They can get you access to equipment, a production engineer, and even edit your podcast. That's all right here at the Mitt TV of Romeo. And you can contact them right now via email at mitt.tvromeo@gmail.com. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Romeo Sports Recap Show. I'm Tim Meyer. I'm here with Emily Malik and Jerry Freeman, and today on the Romeo Sports Recap, we're going to go over the 100 years of Romeo football, Romeo Bulldog football, and both Jerry and Emily have done a lot of work to put together a 100-year football guide, a Romeo football guide, and it's packed full of information. And we want to try to highlight some of the things. But Jerry, first, before we talk about that, what inspired you to do this?
Well, Tim, my family and I moved to Romeo in '97. We were a young family getting settled early in the 2000s. I don't know. I saw this Dan Barnabo to Bar book, and I thought to myself, like, it went up to 96, and I was kind of like, somebody should finish that project, right? I was young in my career, but I planted a seed in my mind saying, one day when I retire, I might finish that thing.
And you leaned on Emily a little bit to help you with this because, Emily, tell us, what you're part of the library and you're sort of the bookworm and went in there and looked up all this stuff.
Yeah, so I am the archivist for the Romeo District Library. I run the Romeo Community Archives outside of the basement of the Kezar branch in downtown Romeo. And yeah, I certainly looked up a lot of things from him, from both the Romeo Observer and from a little bit of stuff from the Romeo Press. Did you ever hear about the Romeo Press, Tim?
I'm not that old. that was a little bit before my time. I'm originally from Utica, but I'm sure there was a Romeo Press along with the Daily Sentinel and everything in Utica. So they all had their little newspapers in and around this area. What were some of the challenges, Jerry, that you faced?
Well, when I first saw the Barnabo to Bar book, it went to 96. And so I thought to myself, well, 96 to now, it's pretty much the internet age. Like, that should be easy to find. The biggest challenge was like prior to 1936. And then I had learned early in the spring that Emily and her team had digitized the Romeo Observers going back to, Emily, 1860 whatever?
1851.
1851?
Yes.
Oh, my God.
The challenge is like backfilling. And so literally, my routine every day, I've been unemployed this summer, my routine was get up in the morning, do some work on the guide, go to the library for 2, 3, 4 hours, jump on a computer, and just backtrack through old observers that are all in PDF format, searchable, find all the football stuff, and then, use that to backfill from 1936 to 1935.
That's a lot of years. That's a lot of time and effort. I mean, how long did it take you to complete this?
Well, I know helping Jerry out, I think it was like 150 hours.
I put 150 hours into it. I've worked in marketing. I used to work for a marketing agency.
Yeah, I think...
If this was a project at an agency to a client, it'd be 5 figures.
So you used the Romeo Observer Summit, but what else did you find a good resources for?
The yearbooks?
Yeah, the Romeo High School yearbooks. They were very helpful because they contained a lot of photos and like some blurbs about what went on with the football season each year. Yeah, it was very helpful. And even listing the names of the people that were on the teams each season, whether they were junior varsity or regular or the senior varsity.
Yeah, I mean, sources I used, there's a football website called Michigan High School Football Data Warehouse. I've been aware of it for years. It goes back to 1950. Literally has every team's game-by-game results. I knew that existed. the Michigan High School Athletic Association has all kinds of like state playoff and records that were easy to tap to.
I mean, some of the records, Romeo Bulldog football, over 400 wins in the history, and about a 60% winning percentage, which is fantastic. And there's a lot of towns and high schools that would kill to have that kind of a record.
Right, Romeo and Utica and Oxford and Richmond, long-standing.
Oxford, Utica, and Romeo, they've played, Romeo and Oxford actually played, over 100 games.
Yeah.
And Romeo has a commanding 42-22 and 4 record against Utica and 44-15 and 1 record against Oxford. So there's 88 years of wins right there.
If you think about it, 60 years ago, like Warren didn't exist. Utica, there was only Utica High School, right? Dakota.
Well, I went to Eisenhower, and that started in 72, and Stevenson was 70. So, they're just young pups,
right?
Compared to the Romeo history.
Between 36 or 25 and 1970.
What are some of the things that you learned or discovered in your thing? Something that made you go like, oh, I didn't know that. That's really interesting.
Oh, that's actually really interesting because I had that very interesting aha moment earlier this year. I think even before Jerry had come to me with this project, was that I was just doing some research on something else, and I found this gentleman named John H. Abo. And this was in a 1905 issue of the Romeo Observer. And it was just a single sentence on the front page of that paper, and it said, "Look, here is our first colored boy who graduated from our high school." And I was like, huh. And then doing some more research, I found that back in 1903, the Romeo High School actually established a high school athletic association in 1903. And he was very active in both football as well as baseball.
Over 120 years ago.
Exactly. And so, yes, I know we're celebrating 100 years, but it truly proves that we were playing football as early as 1903. In fact, one of the first mentions of a football game was between Romeo and Oxford, and also mentioning that there were injuries, and even the person who wrote the quick article said that it was that prize fighting seems less hazardous than football playing.
Back in those days, yes, I would definitely agree with that. What about you, Jerry? What is something that kind of sticks out in your mind that was kind of
I think like Emily said, like I had a aha moment. Like, so to backtrack, I knew this was the 10th year anniversary of Romeo winning the state championship. So I wrote an article, I don't know, in February, published by Mitt TV. Then I heard something that this was the Team 100 year for Romeo football. And in my mind, I thought, 100 years of football coincides with 10th anniversary, right? Nice round numbers. Then I started going to the library, and Emily pointed out, like, Romeo football goes back farther than 100 years ago. So I had a little bit of a crisis. I was like, well, I can't call this 100-year anniversary. So that's where we kind of came up with the theme of the publication, which is 100 years of. We don't claim Romeo's only played for 100 years. This is the 100th team, right?
Of your guide, right? The 100th year, 100th team.
The team is called the 100th team.
Yes.
Right. We couldn't come out and say, well, actually, right, 120 some odd years of football. So we tried not to undercut that. So we say we're just going to go back 100 years, and then Emily and I have talked. Like, we have ideas about maybe a story for next year. What came before the 100 years?
Well, I mean, there's been over 1,150 players that have played football here at Romeo, and 27 all-staters, and that I count, as well as 3 guys that made it to the pros, which is pretty amazing. I do remember the 3 guys, John Lomakowski, Zach Fowler, and Joe Bocci, being the most recent. Joe, everybody, Joe was He was what the football players call a beast out there. And I remember Zach because I was a sophomore in high school when he was playing against Isaac. So I know Zach. John, I was just born in 19.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah.
There are Lomakowskis playing these days. I see their names on the roster. John Lomakowski, the NFL player, spells his name a little differently. I've asked people. I presume they're all related, but
do they know? Head coach in 1936 was Dan Barnabo, and everybody knows Barnabo Field, but they probably don't know the name behind Barnabo, Dan Barnabo. Why the field is named. He's the all-time winningest coach, head coach only, over 120 wins, and he sort of set the tone. Really set the tone for the modern, the day Romeo football.
Yeah, Dan changed Romeo from being Peachmen to Bulldogs.
Exactly. He had Bulldogs all about, and for some reason he would always name them 7. I guess for the good luck of it all, especially if you had 3 Bulldogs at the same time, all named 7.
And you have a picture of Dan with a bulldog, actually, in your guide, so people can see that.
Some of these pictures Emily has shared and others have shared. Like somebody pointed out, like all the players either have a 7 or their number combinations add up to 7. Yeah,
that's kind of wild.
Never met Dan Barnabo. I suspect he was kind of a superstitious, maybe kind of guy.
He may have been. I mean, I never met him either.
But he had a winning record, though.
A little before my time.
Coached football and basketball for 20 years.
And Dan Barnabo Field, right there, the new field. It's got a nice big statue of a what? Of a bulldog.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
As you say, Emily. But there's some other highlights.
I've interviewed multiple people a couple of people older than me who were students when Barnabo, he retired in
77.
77. But a couple of older people who were still students then who met him. So nobody has a bad word to say about him.
Yeah, that's amazing. You need a coach like that really can set up the culture, football culture, and the sort of the reputation of.
And he won, right?
Well,
it's nice to be a good, friendly coach.
You don't go far.
At some point, the fans want some wins, and Dan won, and he was a recognized leader in not just Romeo or Macomb County, but throughout the state for saying, hey, athletics are growing. Let's establish some rules and guidelines and regulations and that kind of stuff.
And he sort of, like you say, set the tone. There's some highlights. The team from 76 to 79 was like 25 and 1.
Oh, yes.
Which is pretty fantastic. And in 2015, there's a lot of information in the book about the state championship. A lot of comments from the former players and former athletic director, and people would be really interested. I mean, you were here in 2015. You both probably experienced some of that state championship. What was that like?
Well, technically I was not here because I actually got hired at the Romeo Library in 2016. But 2015, I was over in Grand Rapids actually finishing up my undergrad.
But you heard about Romeo winning the football championship.
Maybe a little bit.
Yeah. And what did you think after when you went through some of the information here about that team?
Oh, it was wonderful. And just seeing the journey of how they won each of those games and how, were there times where it wasn't always guaranteed, of course. But at the end, when you see how they triumphed, it was always amazing. And even seeing other times where they won the state championships. But still, just to see, because I've been getting into a lot more football and seeing the Detroit Lions and how they've been progressing over the last few years, it's been very exciting to see that. And that's the same goes with the Bulldogs. And seeing them how they've grown over time. I mean, yes, as everyone's mentioned, they are very winning and always have been winning, but there's always room for growth for them. And and especially for longtime fans, they've seen them blossom even more so. There's always room for improvement. And I'm sure that Dan Barnabo was also aware of that. It's like, yes, we're winning, but there's always room for improving so we can be consistent about the winning.
Yes, and they have been pretty consistent about the winning. Obviously, 60% winning championship. What about
my experience with
2015? Yeah.
So to backtrack, we moved here in late 90s. I started getting involved with Romeo football. I did the end zone camera from 2007 to 11. My son played and graduated in 2011. I had like a year off. The AD at the time said, hey, we need a clock keeper. I said, yeah, I'll do it. So since 2014, I've been I'm the Friday night clock keeper. So if
and I seen you up there.
If anyone's got complaints about
I seen you
a second didn't go off or should have gone off, I'm the guy.
Or some seconds went off and nobody noticed and Romeo wins.
I can't say that. So yeah, the 2015 season, right? I was up there they had a good run of great season, a lot of home playoff games, and no lie, we'd be up there in the booth going, wow, that was great. They're going to move on to next week. And not to doubt the team, but each week we thought, this might be it. And,
yeah, it might be the last one.
And then we're up at Ford Field, and they won it all. It was pretty incredible.
And you know, you were part of it, actually, and that's got to make you feel pretty good.
Oh, it was pretty fun to watch. Yep, for sure.
So the guide, 100 Years Romeo Football, how can somebody get it?
We have a website, romeofootball100.org. You can go there. The guide exists in two versions. One is a free online PDF flip book. Go to the website, click it. You can scroll through it on your phone, on a browser. And then we do have some print versions. One's like a softcover magazine style, a little more affordable. And then there's a hardcover, we call it the collector's edition. Doesn't contain advertising. You know, it's more of it's not quite a coffee table book, but, you know, so those are both available.
So anybody that's played Romeo football or is a Romeo football fan
sure.
definitely wants to get a copy of this, and we'll put up on the screen the website as well. What is your strangest memory of Romeo football? I mean, from doing the research in the book, I mean, well, you know, was there somebody with one leg? Was it, you know, I mean, tell me a little bit about your sort of strangest, just from the football side.
That's a little tough because I was just looking at all the articles that were particularly with the football families that had been playing for generations and just seeing their names and seeing all the headlines that would say, oh, the Romeo team won over Oxford, or this game turned into a wake, that kind of thing. So I found that very amusing of how the writers would frame a certain game in that regard.
Did you find it interesting that Romeo, there's actually families of people that have been part of the Romeo Bulldog, you know?
Oh, there is. In fact, I wrote an article about the Lorraine family. Their grandfather, Don Deemer, goes back to the Peachman days. There's other families in Romeo.
By the way, we had those Peachman uniforms one year that Kurt Reines brought out, and I'm trying to broadcast a game, and I could not see the numbers, so right. I can see why Dan Barnabo got rid of them. But anyway, I'm sorry.
So yeah, stuff, and other people have told me about other families. I think next year, right, I'll reach out to some of those other families.
Yeah, I mean the Reines family. That's another
There's
one.
an article in the guide about Kurt and his dad and his uncles who. There's a whole intense Utica.
And they were sort of a mixed family. They're a mixed family. They won Utica. And
you're from Utica? Yeah. So there's a good article about the intensity of the Reines Utica Romeo Little Brown Jug rivalry.
Little Brown Jug. Yeah, they used to have, and I don't know if I don't think Romeo's played Utica a bit for the Jug.
Not in a couple of years. But when they play,
they do play for
the Jug is up for grabs.
Yeah, Ed Romeo has dominated that. let's put it this way. There are more Romeo victories on that mug or on that jar than...
Yeah, but for a while, Utica dominated.
Yeah, well, yeah, in the late 60s for sure.
Kurt's dad was like a 2-time All-Stater. Utica, during Kurt's dad's days, gave Romeo its not 2 biggest losses, but 2 of the top 3 losses. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic that you guys did this. I did a lot of stuff for Eisenhower and their history and stuff, but it's mostly video and highlights and things like that. But to do the research and compile all the statistics, I mean, I just stay awake.
Well, I mean, I work from like 10 to 7, so at least I got work, and then I have home, so at least I can separate myself from that.
Yeah.
And also keep time away from the computer. In fact, there's actually a good rule is that if you spend 20 minutes staring at a computer, look away from the computer for 20 seconds while staring at something that's 20 feet away. So 20.
Yeah. And Jerry, how about you?
This project would not be possible without the work of Emily in the archives. Literally. Right?
Thank you, Jerry.
I'm old enough. I've done library research. Like, to do what I did in June and July would have taken a whole year if I had to pull down old newspapers, manually scroll through them, look for words. Like, no, they digitized everything. If anybody's interested in Romeo history, and you think,
well, Romeo Bulldog history, football is a big part of Romeo history.
Well, I'm, as I said, unemployed, looking for work. If I don't find work by the end of September, I might retire, and then I don't know, track and field. I'm a track nerd. I might do a 50 years of Romeo track guide. Right? I know it's all in the Observer.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That's true. It'd be all in the Observer.
Anything.
And the thing, too, is that not just with the Observer, but with the older Romeo newspapers like the Investigator, the Argus, the Hydrant, as well as the Press, is that all of those now have been fully digitized and uploaded to the Suburban Library Cooperative's local history digital collection website.
They used to call that microfilms or whatever, but now they don't. They don't microfilm things anymore. They just digitize.
No, it's on searchable PDF. Way easier.
Yeah,
exactly. Much easier.
Way easier.
Well, this certainly was very interesting, and congratulate you guys on a fantastic job, because I know it's a lot of work. Just going through the guide when I got it on Sunday night, just looking through it and all the things that you guys included into this publication. It's a read that you have to read a few times, because you could miss something. But I found it very interesting, and I think the folks out there, if you're interested in Romeo football, and you're a big Romeo football fan, you should have one of these. This guide is definitely all-encompassing, at least for the last 100 years.
There are some individuals locally who are a great help. Greg Brannert, former AD, Greg Ganfield, former coach, Richard Corey.
Oh, yes, absolutely, Richard Corey.
Yep. Kurt Reines, Jason Couch, and another guy, David Thompson, who early on, a friend heard I was working on this project, and he said, "You need to talk to David Thompson." I never heard of him. He said, "Oh, he's kind of like the right, the archivist of Romeo football." Dave has been a godsend.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. He played in the 70s. He coached for a while. Like he fact checked numerous things for me. So shout out to David Thompson.
And I like to make some few shout outs myself.
Sure.
I love to shout out the intern who I had while we were digitizing the entire newspapers. His name is Genderless. He was with me for about 2.5 years digitizing all the newspapers, including the Romeo Observer. And it actually, I'll backtrack a little bit. So the project started actually about late 2017, early 2018 with my predecessor, and with the help of an intern, and she had worked on for like a year or two before COVID happened. And so as a result, the project was placed on hold. And then flash forward to 2022 when I got hired in as the archivist, or got promoted. And And it was around the same time that we also got Jen as our intern because he was doing an internship with the Suburban Library Cooperative, in which the Romeo Library is part of, and many libraries in Macomb County are. And we're trying to figure out what things to do, and the conversation about restarting the project came up, and we were all for it because there had been stuff that had already been done, and we had this big scanner and software that. Also, another shout out to the Library Board of Trustees and the Friends of the Romeo District Library who actually bought those.
They were behind you on that.
Yes, exactly. And also a shout out to my supervisor and Kezar branch manager, Stacy Guzzo, for really pouring her heart out, even to the point of crying in front of the library board and the friends just to get those equipment for us when the project initially began. But once we actually relaunched the project in 2022, December of 2022, we were consistently doing this each week and digitizing.
This is digitizing the newspapers.
Yes, nearly 8,000 editions of all those newspapers. And that took then we officially finished it basically at the end of July of this year. That is like 2.5 years.
Well, the fans of Romeo football, and Jerry especially, appreciative of the work you guys did. It's tedious work a little bit, and plus you got to read some of it too. It's almost like studying for med school.
Well, like if anybody's interested, we have a Facebook page. Like if you go to romeofootball100.org, we have links to the Facebook page. Like just to fill the time over the summer, I would go to the library, say, oh, we're going to put a spotlight on, for example, the 2002 team. Mm-hmm. They beat Saginaw. They beat the team that had the best high school player in America at the time. Romeo won. So the Observer, I would go and capture the weekly progress from the season and post it so people could, relive it. It's a bit of a trip down memory lane. We did that for, any team that made the playoffs or, going back to the late 70s, teams that, accomplished worthwhile things.
And you have them highlighted. In the guide, there's bullet point highlights of special seasons and championships and things.
But to speak to the value that a newspaper brings to a community, this is a bit ironic, right? The 2015 team's accomplishments are not covered in a newspaper because the Observer stopped publishing in June of that year, and
you'd have to get Macomb Daily articles,
which is hit and miss. And we do have a newspaper in town, but it doesn't provide the coverage the Observer used to. The Observer. I have a degree in journalism. I don't know if I can say this word. The Observer was a damn good newspaper, right? Thorough, detailed, covered a lot of stuff, fun, informative, sports,
and local.
Yep,
local.
Exactly.
Yeah. In fact, I have a little story about how the library acquired the Observer and all the newspapers that are associated with it. So in 2015, then right before the newspaper folded in June, Mel was considering donating it to the library. Now, at first, Stacy, my manager, had been talking with Mel's son, Tom, about acquiring the newspapers and digitizing them as a way to preserve them for a future. And then Mel Blake, of all people, he stepped in because he was very protective of the papers. Anybody who knew him, and I'm sure there's plenty of people in this town that knew Mel because he lived to the age of 95, so how could you not? And he wanted them to go to a place that could be cared for, and after some back and forth, Mel actually agreed to donate all those newspapers that he had, with the exception of the Romeo Hydrant. He donated them to the library, and it actually took roughly about 2 years to transfer them out of the Romeo Observer building that's on West St. Clair Street over to the Kezar branch, which is just a block away, nothing wrong with that, and then also to organize them in the way that made sense. And because of these newspapers is the whole reason why the Romeo Community Archives was born, officially born in 2017.
And again, it gets a lot of support from the board members.
Absolutely.
And the people support it too. And in this particular project, Romeo football fans and players, former players, going to love this. Emily Malik, Jerry Freeman, thank you for joining me here on the Romeo Sports Recap.
Tim, thanks for having us.
Thank you very much, Tim. Really appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this special edition of the Romeo Sports Recap Show, 100 Years of Romeo Football with Jerry Freeman and Emily Malik. We hope to see you next time right here in the Romeo Sports Recap. I'm Tim Meyer for the Mitt TV. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in to this episode of the Romeo Sports Recap Show, powered by the Mitt TV. Remember, this show is available on both YouTube and Spotify. You can subscribe to the Mitt TV YouTube page and click the notification bell to stay up to date on the latest episodes of the Romeo Sports Recap. Or you can find us on Spotify and follow our podcast, Romeo Sports Recap. From the Mitt TV, I'm Tim Meyer, signing off with a final word from our sponsors. This podcast is powered by the Mitt TV of Romeo, Michigan. If you're looking to start a podcast for your business or personal use, look no further than the Mitt TV. They can get you access to equipment, a production engineer, and even edit your podcast. That's all right here at the Mitt TV of Romeo. And you can contact them right now via email at mitt.tvromeo@gmail.com.